Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Shop Thursday. You know, that time when we all gather together at the coffee shop and have a donut, piece of toast, a roll, maybe just plain old coffee. Mmm, so good for us because it helps us to wake up in the morning, doesn't it? Also helps us to have a better, clearer look at Scripture, and we can start talking about things that are, well, let's put it this way, just plain difficult to talk about. And that's what we have this morning. Uh, if you're following along with the alternate readings for the Old Testament, you know that we're just pushing our way through the stories of Samuel and Saul, and now we're talking about David. And today's story that we have, it's found in 2 Samuel chapter 11. And it's the story of David committing adultery with Bathsheba. And then David, in essence, murdering her husband, Uriah. What do you mean, in essence? Well, he sends him out to battle so that he dies purposefully. This is a strange story. I mean, think about it. All up to this point, what have we seen of David? We have seen David as a true leader, one who took on the mantle of responsibility of being a king, one who was faithful to God, one who rejoiced in all the different stuff, bringing the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, one who had been looking forward now to building a temple. And remember, he never gets the temple built. That'll be Solomon who comes after him, who gets the temple built. But he's looking forward to that. And last week we saw how God promised to David that his dynasty would last forever. He would establish to him an everlasting kingdom, and all that kind of stuff. And wow, David really is a man after God's heart. And look at the Psalms, all the different Psalms that we have, Psalms of David. And then we have a story like this. What's everybody think about that? Seems a little out of place, doesn't it? A little wacky. Like, how did all the people who put the Older Testament together, all the Jewish people who were recording their story of faith and in God, why would they put this in? Why didn't they just kind of take the big giant eraser and go and take it out? It's an intriguing story. It starts, we have a little look at what we see going on that's all wrong with David. It starts at the very beginning of chapter 11. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. All right, there's two things going on there that, if you're just one of those people who just sits back and reads the Older Testament, especially Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, Chronicles, just for the fun of it, and I know who you are. It's all of you right here, right? Yeah, right. Well, the reason we don't do that is because it does get kind of confusing, and sometimes there are things that are there that we just don't see, and there's two things going on in this very first verse that we need to pay attention to. The first is, in the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle. Well, who's going out to battle? Well, it's not David, but he sort of is. He's sending his troops out. But here, this is the first time that David doesn't go out, because the kings are supposed to lead their troops into warfare. So he's not. Is he abdicating his responsibilities? All right. And you might remember, too, that way back, and we had that in our lesson last week, wasn't David promised peace by God, that now this would be a time of peace that you would enter into? What's he doing? Still going out to war. I mean, He's not supposed to be the warrior king anymore. He's supposed to be the king who rules in peace. And he's not leading them. He's sending other people out to do the dirty work. So you already get a sense that things are not going like they should go. Now, here's where it gets a little dicey, and this is the story that we don't like to teach to our Sunday school kids. And we have to come up with all kind of alternative ways to explain things to them when we get to it. But basically, David sleeps with someone else's wife. He commits adultery. And in this whole story, he not only breaks that commandment, he breaks you shall not kill, because he has the husband killed later on. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. And you shall be truthful too. You shall not bear false witness, because later on he commands Joab, his general, to lie to the people. Now, you might wonder what's going on here, and what's everybody make of this, right? I mean, how do you put this together with David being God's chosen to lead the people? Here he is. He's falling into some pretty sinful ways, and he's one chosen by God. He's our hero. He's Don't you sometimes see some parallels setting up here with what goes on pretty much all the time, but even in our day and age, where we set some of our political leaders up on a pedestal and say they can do no wrong, and yet look at what happens here with David. And I know I've heard people make excuses. Well, yeah, you see that all through the Bible. God uses sinful people to bring his will about. Well, I think that's kind of you leave something out in that equation. It never says God is pleased with their sinfulness. In fact, there are consequences to that sinfulness. And that's what we're going to have in this same continuous lesson next week. The consequences of David's actions. So don't think that, hey, just because he's God's chosen and the people of Israel are God's chosen people, that somehow they get off scot-free. It doesn't work out that way. In fact, we see all kind of bad stuff that's going to happen. The son that is born of this relationship dies. David's empire is constantly being attacked. David himself is now on the run. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens. So read the whole story, not just part of it, right? I mean, do you see some similarities going on with what's happening in our political scene in our country? Okay, we won't go there, because I know there's people who will get a little upset and say, now you're getting political. Hey, it is political. Our lives are full of politics. No matter what you do or what you say, and as far as you try to run from it, you can't. We are all part of a political system. The question is, who is supreme? Do we put our political leaders or our political party or whatever as top dog in our lives? Or do we put God as number one? You see what happens to David when he doesn't put God as number one, and he puts his own selfish desires and ambitions as number one? Things fall apart pretty fast. So read that. And I would encourage you to read a little earlier in Samuel and try to find out why Joab, the general, did exactly what David asked him to do. Why didn't Joab stand up to David and say, no, I can't do that. I can't withdraw the troops and allow Uriah to be killed. That's just plain outright wrong. It's murder. Why did he turn a blind eye? The answer can be found earlier in 2 Samuel. And I will give Oh, what should I say? I will give a free indulgence to anyone who comes up with the right answer and can tell me. Nah, just joking, just joking. But just have some fun with it. See if you can try to figure out why Joab got away with what he did. Well, God's blessings be with everybody. I hope you all can find your cup of coffee sitting around somewhere. I got mine. Enjoy it. Drink it. Even as I sit here in the smoke. What do you mean smoke? Now, I'm not smoking. We're getting all that smoke from way out west, the horrible wildfires. Right now, the way that the upper atmosphere jet stream is moving, it's bringing a lot of those particles of smoke right down on top of us. Has been for the last couple days. And we're still kind of suffering from that. It's kind of weird, kind of grayish days, kind of, even though the sun's shining through it, just plain strange. Just like some of our scripture readings. God's blessings be with you. And remember, God is number one in our lives. Not any politician, not any political system. God is number one. Blessings be with you.